Welcome to Voices of the People. I'm Tershea, Interim President and CEO of the Greater Baltimore Urban League. And this is our first episode of Season 2.0. And before we get into anything else, I want to be honest with you about why we're starting here, why this topic, why right now, and why just me. We are living through a moment that is demanding something very specific from an organization like ours. To be clear about what we believe, to say plainly what we see, and honestly, we cannot keep watering down what's happening in our communities just to make other people comfortable. I am not willing to do that. I have never been willing to do that, and neither has the Greater Baltimore Urban League. Not in 1924 when we were created, and not today, in 2026, when this conversation is being recorded. So today we're going to talk about the vote, about what it means, about what is being done to it, and about what organizations like this community, and this city intends to do in response. But we're also going to talk about something bigger than just the ballot, because the vote is not the finish line, it's the starting point. The vote is the floor, not the ceiling. The ceiling is full economic mobility. It is wealth. It is housing. It is jobs that pays what your labor is actually worth. It is a school that teaches your child who they really are. And it's a city that invests in every neighborhood with the same urgency. And that is what the Greater Baltimore Urban League is fighting for. And that is what this podcast, every single episode, is going to be about. So, let's get into it. I want to start by being very specific because this is not an abstract. In the last several years, we have watched the federal government systematically dismantle the protections that generations of Black Americans literally bled and died to secure. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, that landmark, hard-fought, hard-won piece of legislation, has just been gutted by the federal courts piece by piece. In 2013, Shelby County versus Holder stripped the preclearance requirement that made states with a history of discrimination get federal approval before changing their voting laws. That single decision opened a door that had bad actors walking in through it ever since. And then just recently, in April of this year, 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Louisiana versus Callais in a way that further undermined communities of color's ability to change racial vote dilution under federal law. One day before Governor Wes Moore signed the Maryland Voting Rights Act of 2026 into law. One day. That is how close it was. Now, let's break down what vote dilution actually means, because people throw that term around like it's complicated, but it really is not. Vote dilution is when they draw district lines or design the voting system itself in a way that draws out your community's voice. When 30% of the population is Black, as in Baltimore County, but the maps are drawn so that only one of 7 districts reflects that reality. That is vote dilution. And let's be real, that does not happen by accident. Those are choices that people make. And here in Maryland, we have seen it. In Baltimore County, residents, alongside of NAACP, Common Cause, and ACLU, had to go to federal court in 2022 to challenge a redistricting plan that was racially discriminatory and unlawful. They won, but the fact that they even had to fight that fight in Baltimore, Maryland, in 2022, well, that tells you something. At the federal level, the current administration has added more barriers to the ballot, efforts to purge voter rolls, challenges to mail-in voting, restrictions that hit Black, brown, elderly, and low-income voters hardest. And that is not by coincidence. It is a pattern. Now, here's what I also want you to know. That 81% of Maryland voters across race and party said that they supported the Maryland Voting Rights Act. 81%. And it still took years of advocacy, years of testimony, and years of coalition building to even get it across the finish line. That tells you that the gap between what people believe and what policy reflects And closing that gap is exactly the work that the Greater Baltimore Urban League is doing. Why does this connect directly to economic mobility? Well, let me tell you directly. Your vote determines who sits in the rooms where economic decisions are being made, who approves the budgets that fund the workforce development programs, who writes the housing policies, who decides whether the community benefits agreements are required when a developer comes into your neighborhoods, who chooses whether the tax credit goes to a corporation or a family trying to buy their first home. If your vote is diluted, if the system is rigged so that your political representation does not match your population, then you are locked out of economic decisions that shape your life, full stop. Voting is economic power, period. And when they come for your vote, they are coming for your economic future. Now, I'm going to keep saying that, right? And I'm going to say it clearly every chance I get because it matters. Now, I want to take a moment and ground us in who we are because I think that context matters. The Greater Baltimore Urban League was founded in December of 1924. We were organized and chartered by the National Urban League. In 1924, Black Baltimoreans were fighting to get jobs with the fire department, to be admitted into colleges and universities, and to access the basic infrastructure of civic life that was being denied to them by law, by custom, and by violence. The Urban League was there. We were fighting, organizing, and building pathways. And for nearly 102 years, we have not stopped. We are still here. And what I want you to understand is that every threat that we are facing today, the attack on voting rights, the economic inequalities, the housing crisis, the workforce gaps, none of this is new to us. We have been meeting these challenges in Baltimore, Maryland, and across this country for over a century. We have seen administrations come, and we have seen them go. We have seen rights won and then attacked. And we have seen communities devastated and then rebuild. And guess what? We are still here. In 2024, we celebrated our centennial, a century of impact, a future of promise. And it wasn't just a party for us. For us, it was a reckoning. We asked ourselves a question. Who have we been for the last 100 years, and who do we need to be in this moment? And the answer we kept coming back to was kind of simple. We do not shrink, we do not be quiet, and we do not wait for someone else to name what's happening in our communities. We show up, we speak clearly, and we do the work. We are not just a logo on the wall, and we are not history sitting in a frame somewhere. We are active and we are outside, and we are accountable for this community every single day. So when I stand up and talk about voting rights, it is not a political positioning, it is mission, and it has always been mission. Civil rights and economic empowerment are not two separate lanes, they are the same road. Now let me tell you where we are right now. What Greater Baltimore Urban League is actually doing in Baltimore and in Maryland to advance economic mobility and to protect the rights of the communities that we serve. On the workforce side, we're in the middle of a generation-defining moment. The federal government is pulling back. Programs people rely on are being cut back, defunded, or put at risk completely, and we are still here, finding ways to connect people to careers, not jobs, but careers, sustainable income, pathways to ownership, trades that pay $60,000 a year and beyond. On the entrepreneurship side, we're building on the momentum of the Restaurant Accelerator program. We're working with small business owners to navigate access to capital because that capital access gap is real, it is documented, and it is killing businesses before they even have a chance to grow. And on the civic engagement and civil rights front, we are not on the sidelines. We were not on the sidelines when the Maryland Voting Rights Act was being pushed through Annapolis. We're not on the sidelines right now, and we will not be on the sidelines in the future. And when I say Maryland moved, Maryland moved. Maryland said we will not wait for the federal government to protect our people. We will do it at the state level, and organizations like ours have been a part of that coalition. Because vote power is economic power. I said it before, and I will say it again. Voting power is economic power. And this is where we are, in motion, with intention, for Baltimore. GBUL is committed to being an engine of economic mobility in Baltimore, Maryland. Not watching from the sidelines, not sitting in the back seat, we intend to help drive where Baltimore goes next. GBUL has been the organization in Baltimore that bridges the gaps between civic power and economic power. And we've been doing that for nearly 102 years. And that is not something that we're working towards. It is who we are and who we have always been. And what I am committed to is making sure that that bridge is wider and stronger and more accessible than it has ever been before. That someone who comes through our workforce development program understands that their career is connected to who represents them in City Council. That the Black business owner in Baltimore who knows that the contracts available to them are directly shaped by who is making procurement policies. That the young person in our Saturday Leadership Program understands that their vote in 2026 will shape the economy that they're trying to build their future in. That integration, workforce, entrepreneurship, civic engagement, housing, education, all connected, all moving towards the same goal. And that is the GBUL that we are building. And that is the Baltimore, Maryland that we are working towards. We are done waiting for permission to do what we have to do for our communities. What we are doing is doing the work in the climate that is actually existing, because that is what Baltimore requires of us. I want to close by saying something simply. The fact that you are listening here right now, that matters. Maybe you've been following GBUL for years. Maybe this is your first time hearing about us. Either way, you are welcome, and this conversation is for you. Baltimore is full of people working hard, fighting for their families, and dreaming beyond the system that told us what was possible, and refusing to be defined by any of it. This city is full of people who deserve better than what the system around them has offered. And this city is full of people who have the power, collective, organized, and unapologetic power to demand and build something better. So here's what I want you to do. Subscribe to this show on your YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever platform you're listening to it right now. And send this episode to someone who needs to hear this conversation. And if you want to go deeper, visit gbul.org. We want to hear from you, so reach out to us at podcast@gbul.org. We're listening. The vote is the floor, economic mobility is the ceiling, and everything in between. The workforce development, the small business, investments, the housing, the education, the civic engagement, that is the work, and that is what we are doing. Thank you for being here for episode 1. I'm Tershea Rice. This is Voices of the People podcast, presented to you by the Greater Baltimore Urban League. Let's keep building, y'all. Peace.